We're now going to focus our attention on graphing inequalities. And like any inequality, we have more than one solution. We have a range of solutions. We have a solution set. And in this example, we're going to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to show you how to determine the solution set when we're graphing an inequality by graphing it as an equality, as an equation, and then using a test point. And then I'm going to show you a couple of tricks on your, not really tricks, but a couple of functions on your calculator and one application on your calculator that makes this job much, much easier. Now, you notice that this is titled Dashed Boundary. And the reason why it's titled that way is when I look at the two inequalities that I have here, I've got a less than and a greater than. And it's just like with open dots and closed dots on a number line. So when I've just got a simple less than or greater than, not a less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, we use our boundary, the line, the linear function there is we're either going to need to use a dashed or a solid line. And in this case, we're using a dashed line. Now, first thing I've got to do, first thing I want to do, if I'm going to graph this on a calculator, I've got to solve these equalities for y, because my calculator is y equal, and we're going to see that I can also use y less than, y greater than, and even y less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So let's go about that business first, and then we'll look at using a test point, and then a little bit later the calculator. All right, so if I got 3x plus 1/2 y is less than 2, I may want to start by subtracting 3x from both sides. And once I do, then I'm going to have 1/2 y is less than negative 3x plus 2. And so I've got this 1/2 y. Well, if I want to isolate the y, since that's actually y divided by 2, then I want to multiply both sides of the inequality by 2. And so 2 times 1/2 is just 1. That's going to leave me with y is now less than. 2 times negative 3x is going to yield negative 6x. And 2 times 2 is going to be 4. Now, we're in Algebra 2. I shouldn't have to write every step here. You should be able to catch on with what I'm doing. All right, and I'm going to go ahead, let's go ahead and rewrite this second inequality, also solving for y. So we got negative x plus 2y is greater than 4. I'm going to add x to both sides. Once I do, then I've got 2y is greater than x, because I'm adding x to both sides, plus 4. And this time we're going to, since we got 2 times y, we're going to divide by 2. And so now y is greater than 1/2 x plus 2. All right. And I'm going to start with this first one. Let's move over here to the next slide. Now I have graphed first equation, which was y is less than, I think it was less than, let me double check. Yeah, less than negative 6x plus 4. But I graphed it as an equality. In other words, when I put in my graph, I put y equals negative 6x plus 4, and I've got this line. Now, in determining here what my solution set is, I'm going to pick a test point. And unless my line passes through the origin, I always want to use the origin, 0, 0. When x is 0, y is 0. And then I just solve that. I substitute in 0 for y and 0 for x. And I try to determine, okay, does that give me a true statement? And if it does give me a true statement, then I am going to shade, and you'll see what I mean here in a moment, towards the test point. In this case, the test point is 0, 0. So let's see. If y is 0, let me change colors. Y is 0, less than negative 6 times 0 plus 4. Well, negative 6 times 0 is 0. So now we got 0 is less than 4. And I asked myself, is that true? Is 0 less than 4? Well, of course, then it is. And since that origin is on this side of the line, I'm going to shade towards my test point. And the shaded portion is my solution set. Now, my calculator graphed that as a line. And where in reality, I need to know and understand, if I've got it that way, that is a dashed line. Now, I'm going to move over now to the calculator, and I'm going to show you a couple of different methods that you can use, one involving an app that you can get from Texas Instruments, maybe on your calculator anyway. You just may have not used it, or, well, hopefully we used it somewhere in the past. Okay, we're over here on the calculator, and the first step I'm going to take, I'm going to go back in here to the y equals. You can see that's where I actually graphed that from the slide before, but I'm going to clear this. And I'm going to move this cursor and highlight it to where you see it blinking right now, and I'm going to hit enter. And I'm going to move down to my choices, and right there is just a linear with a solid line. And when that little triangle is in the top right-hand corner, that represents greater than. And triangle there in the lower corner represents less than. And then there's a few more options that you can use. But let's go back to, since we're dealing with a less than, let's use that. And you can see that it's now using a less than. So let's put in that equation again. I'm going to use the same one, negative 6x plus 4. And we're going to take a look at our graph. And Shazam, you can see that it's shaded in the correct portion. Now again, that was the side that we had, on the previous slide, we tested that test point of 0, 0, determined that gave us a true statement, and we shaded in the direction of the test point, and this calculator will do this for us automatically. Now, what it doesn't do, it doesn't give me a dashed or it just gives me a solid line, and I would just have to know, if I'm using this method, I just got to remember and know I'm not using a less than or equal to, I'm just using a less than, and therefore this must be represented as a dashed line. Now, in the second equation, or inequality, which was y is greater than 1/2 x plus 2, we're going to do that. But in this case, I'm going in here to the apps. So I hit the app button. You can see it highlighted in red. And option 7 down here is Inequalities. And I'm going to choose this Inequalities app. So I'm going to hit 7 and enter. It says hit any key, so I'm going to hit enter. And it has employed this app. Now I'm going to clear this equation first. Or excuse me, inequality. And again, I'm going to move over to where we highlighted before. But you see it highlights the entire thing, not just that left-hand side. And I'm going to hit enter. And this time, when I get here where it says y equal, I'm going to start scrolling through my choices. Now we've got a greater than. Well, there's a less than, and you can see right below in the style, it's going to give me a dashed line. And there's less than or equal to, and then there's the greater than. And in this inequality, I want to use that greater than. And so I'm going to say, okay. And now I'm going to put in my inequality statement where y is greater than. And we had 1/2 x plus 2. I'm going to use 0.5 x plus 2. Let's see what happens here. We're going to hit the graph button. All right, and so there it's shaded in my solution set, and you'll notice here I've got a dashed line. So now I don't have to remember that. If I just set it up correctly, my calculator using that Inequalities app will do the work for me.